from the heart of rural France. This is the Keto Woman podcast, brought to you by me. Hello Keto Lovelies, I'm Daisy Brackenhall, and I've spent most of my life struggling with my weight and confidence, and have always had a difficult relationship with food. Even when I finally got to my target weight after weight loss surgery and eating low carb, I couldn't maintain it and I was miserable. I've been keto now for over 2 years, and it has given me the freedom to fall in love with food again, without the constant gain, loss, guilt, virtue cycle of before. Health and happiness is where it's at now, running on fat. Welcome to the Keto Woman podcast. Each week I'll be chatting to inspirational women, maybe even the odd man, to discover the secrets to their success so that I can share them with you. So what is keto? Keto is a way of eating that enables you to switch your body's main fuel source from sugar to fat. Who doesn't want to be a fat burner, right? But how do we achieve this? A great place to start is by keeping carbs under 20 grams a day. So things like leafy greens and above ground vegetables, plus some nuts and seeds and the incidental carbs you find in things like full fat dairy. Choose delicious fatty proteins and be free and easy with oily dressings on salad and butter on your veggies. Once you're in the swing of things, you can tweak it to suit you. Make your own personalised keto. You'll hear all sorts of ways to keto from my guests. There is no one way to do keto, no one size fits all. I hope to show you just how flexible and fabulous this way of eating can be. I'm not a doctor, and most of my guests won't be either, so we really can't give you medical advice. It's always best to consult your own doctor when making big changes to your diet and lifestyle, because they know you and your medical history, and so have access to the bigger picture. Wouldn't it be helpful to have one place where you could find all the links? Want to sign up to my new Patreon exclusive Facebook group, Daisy's Lovelies? No problem. How about subscribing to my YouTube channel? Please help me notch up my first 1,000 subscribers by going to links.ketowomanpodcast.com and following the YouTube link. Not following me on Instagram yet? Hit the Instagram button. You get the idea. All the buttons, all the links you need are at links.ketowomanpodcast.com. This is the second part of April's story, so if you haven't listened already, go back to last week's episode, number 100, to catch the first half. April is a busy mum of one amazing teenager, 2 dogs and 2 cats. She lives in Oregon and is currently working on her third new career in life while still holding down a full-time job and assisting in caring for her mother who has early onset Alzheimer's. She has struggled with weight and emotional issues for over 30 years, bouncing back and forth between diets, depression and anxiety. In 2016, she found keto, and although she felt a little better physically and emotionally, she still wasn't losing weight and only lost a little inflammation. Being morbidly obese and knowing that she might not have a lot of time left to get healthy, she was determined to figure out what was going on. Who would have thought the answer lied in butter? We heard all about April's problems in the first half. In part 2, we get to hear how she has started to find the answers she has been looking for. Things got a little emotional at the end, but then it's not every day you record your 100th episode. I get the frustration. I mean, perhaps you would share, you don't have to be exact about it, but some of the listeners know you, but a lot of them won't. What kind of weight are we talking about here? Because you've mentioned that you're heavy and all the rest of it. And I know, because I know you, and I know that you would have that assumption at the weight you are, you know, and I've been in that similar place where the assumption is that when you start a diet, when you're over a certain size, the weight's going to fall off, at least to start with. You know, we all know it's going to plateau at some point. But it's the people who only have the 10 pounds left to lose, the 20 pounds left. They're the people who struggle with losing weight. I should find it easy, at least to start with. Right?
Yes, exactly. And I mean, you've almost paraphrased my entire thought process there. I am morbidly obese. It's definitely an embarrassing thing to say, but it's the truth. When I was in the hospital with cellulitis, the hospital beds have a scale in them. And they asked me, how much do you think you weigh right now? And I told them, and they said, yeah, that's about right. The scale didn't go any higher. And I was over 400 pounds. When I lost the infection, I lost a lot of that weight because it was directly related to the infection, of course. But I still have 200 pounds to lose. And when you're that big, you can't afford to lollygag with getting rid of it. It's not be fat and happy and just make the best of a bad situation. It's not that. It's, I have a kid, you know? I'm at high risk for heart attack, heart disease. I'm not in a good place. And I need to be around. And I want to be around. I want to be a good example. I don't want my son to grow up without his mother. It was really hard when my dad died. My dad and my son were very close. I don't want anybody to have to go through that, let alone my own son. And people will often think that, oh, you're just doing it for weight loss and then you're going to stop. No, I'm doing it so that I can live. And I don't plan on not doing it. Obviously, going back to the SAD diet is not the answer. I had to keep going to figure out why the hell my body was not responding. You hear all the time, everybody had, you know, oh, I lost 50 pounds in the first 10 days. You know, it's all water weight. That's okay. You got to lose the water weight before you can get to the fat weight, right?
Right.
So I always say celebrate your water weight loss because for me, I never had one. I never had that initial release of anything. Like you say, people who say, oh, well, you're just on a plateau, so check your food intake, check your fat intake, check your calorie intake. I wasn't on a plateau because I never lost anything to begin with. You have to lose something to hit a plateau, right? I was angry. I was mad that I was trying so hard. I know this is the right thing to do. Why the hell am I not responding? During this time I think I was kind of blocking out tracking mentally because I had been doing that the first year that I was on keto. And tracking is a lot of hard work. I would take my food scale to work with me and weigh out all of my food. I did that in restaurants. I was that person. I didn't want to be that person. I didn't understand why I couldn't just intuitively eat food and be healthy. But I decided, okay, you know, something isn't going right here, so I need to stop making excuses. I need to open my mind and figure out what the hell is going on. So I invested in a ketone glucose meter and started paying more attention to my foods and my ratios. My ketones never got above 0.3 or 0.4. They hit 0.5 a couple of times, but that was extremely rare. I fasted for 3 days, and my ketones still never went up, and my blood sugar never went down. I had been talking about it with Siobhan. She's also carnivore, and she suggested that I try Keto AF, which is not what people think it stands for, but it stands for Keto Animal Foods. So it's another take on carnivore, kind of a branch off, I guess, where the goal is a 2-to-1 fat-to-protein ratio by gram, not calories. She suggested that I also do an elimination diet to see if there was something that I was eating that was blocking my progress, something that my body couldn't tolerate and I just didn't know. And that really resonated with me because I had just listened to a podcast about Michaela Peterson and her story, where she can't have anything. So I started the 30-day beef, butter, salt, water only experiment. I got blood tests done the first day so that I would have some baseline numbers and know where I was at. It was only beef, usually ground beef or steaks. I had butter at every meal. I had butter on every bite. Most days I ate around 2 sticks of butter. I don't really like cooked fat. I know that's horrifying to some people on keto or carnivore, but I just don't like the texture of it. So that's why I was having so much butter. I had to get the fat in somehow, and that was really the only way to do it. I didn't force fasting. I ate when I was hungry, and I ate until I was satisfied. I ate a lot at first. I was really hungry. That transition period, I couldn't believe how hungry I was. I did start losing weight right away. It was a pound here, a pound there, but every single day in the first week, I lost something. During the first several days, my blood sugars, they were still around the 190s, and they would still go up to about 270 or so after eating, or during the morning when my dawn phenomenon would kick in. My sugars would start rising around 8 or 9 o'clock, and they'd peak around noon, which is really late in the day for the dawn phenomenon to happen. I'm thinking that if I was looking at Kraft's glucose model, I was probably about a level 5, which I think is the highest, which means my sugars go up and it takes a really long time for them to come down. During the first week, my ketones stayed the same. I didn't have any increase in ketones. They were still 0.2 or 0.3, and they never went above 0.5 during that first week. I also had a lot of pain and physical discomfort during my transition in the first week or so. I think it was oxalate dumping, which I had never heard of before. At one point, I couldn't even get out of bed. I was so sore. My body I had pain in my back and in my hips where I'd never had pain before. That was not a lot of fun. So after about a week, my appetite started changing. I wasn't as hungry, and I was able to naturally flow into eating only twice a day. I didn't even have to think about it. I just wasn't hungry. I had no desire to eat. And I was eating less at each meal. I was getting full and satiated on less food. And then I wouldn't get hungry for another 10 or 12 hours. And I wasn't thinking about food. When you have carb addiction, like I do, you think about it all the time. That's why I panicked when I would think of fasting and not having food available to me. So it was very freeing to discover that I didn't even have a thought about food. I didn't wonder, what am I going to have for my next meal and when is it, while I was putting food in my mouth, which is what I was used to. The pain that I was going through went away after, probably the second week. And then I noticed that my ketones were getting higher. I had started hitting 0.7, 0.8, and my blood sugars had gone down to the 190s or so after eating. So that was almost 100 points less after eating than it was in the first week. I didn't lose much weight the second week, but it didn't really matter because I was finally having some of the results that I wanted. I could feel my inflammation going away.
It kind of makes sense, doesn't it, that maybe the two can't go on at the same time. To see that real big shift in your blood sugar and feel changes going on in your body, you can kind of understand why you might not be able to be losing weight at the same time.
Yeah, I feel like they're kind of in tandem. Like, okay, we've repaired this portion. We're going to take a break from this other thing called losing weight, and we're going to focus on your blood sugar. And then we're going to lose a little bit more weight, and then we're going to focus on your blood sugar again. You know, I could see it working that way. So I continued moving farther and farther between meals. My sleep got much better. My mobility got a lot better. Not just walking, but joint pain or reaching around behind me to unhook. Those things, it's kind of like the elimination diet. You don't know that you have a problem with the food until you eliminate and put it back. I didn't realize those things were painful to me until they weren't painful to me. I did end up losing weight that week. I lost about 5 pounds. My blood sugars kind of hovered around where they were, but then I lost the weight. Like you said, one thing, then the other. And then in the 4th week, that's really when everything came together. I didn't eat for 2 days, and I didn't even notice that I didn't eat, other than to be shocked that I hadn't eaten. I just kind of realized, wow, I didn't eat. The last time I ate was 2 days ago. My ketones were at 1.5 and higher, and my fasting blood sugars went all the way down to 112. I can't even remember how long it's been since my fasting blood sugar was that low. And it's still high, but I'm a type 2 diabetic. Those are amazing numbers considering where I was coming from.
Yeah, you've got to remember the context.
Yes. And you know how when people first start keto and then they finally get fat adapted and they get into ketosis and things are just clicking and going right and they just know they're in ketosis. They don't even have to test. They just know it. I never had that feeling. I never felt like I was fat adapted. I had no idea what being in ketosis felt like. And nobody could tell me what it felt like. Well, you'll just know. That's what everybody always said to me. And I'm going, but I don't feel like that. And it's been 2 years now. So, but by the 4th week, I finally felt what it was like to be in ketosis. I could literally taste it in my mouth. I can taste it now. If I go in and out of ketosis, I know when I'm back in it. It was just incredible. This was the feeling I had been waiting for 2 years. My blood sugars, it started taking less time for them to get back to a better range after eating. So I was essentially moving up on the Kraft scale. I lost a little bit of weight that week, but mostly I think my body was focused on getting the ketones up and fat burning. And I remember feeling really hot, not like a hot flash hot, but I just felt my body temperature being higher. And I was like, I am burning fat. I'm fascinated by all the things that the body can do and how we know probably less than 1% of it, and being able to recognize all of these things that my body is doing. It's very awe-inspiring to me. Basically, the end of the experiment is in 30 days, while eating a couple of pounds of beef and 2 sticks of butter every day, I was finally able to lose weight and inflammation and kind of zero out what everybody else was saying, which is fat is your problem. You're eating too much fat. Stop eating fat. Well, I doubled my fat and lost weight. I lost 17 pounds in those 30 days and 10 inches. My fasting blood sugars were down about 100 points. My post-meal blood sugars were down over 100 points. Ketones went from 0.2 to 1.3 and higher. I went from always being hungry to always being satiated or full and in a constant state of ketosis. And I didn't have to force the fasting. I just didn't want to eat. That was great because then I didn't have to fight with it in my mind also.
And you were feeling fine when you started eating again.
Exactly.
That was another problem, wasn't it, when you were fasting before, that actually the fasting bit was okay. It was the refeed, the eating bit that was the problem.
Right.
You can then understand why you're going to not want to fast, because it's not the fasting that you don't want to do. It's the feeling unwell when you stop fasting. So it's like every which way you look at it. You either didn't feel like fasting, you didn't feel great when you were fasting, or the fasting was okay and you felt ill when you ate again. I mean, that's just, that's just a no-win situation, isn't it?
Yeah, I actually started developing a fear of eating when I was fasting. So I exchanged one anxiety for another, right? I stopped fearing the fasting, but then I started fearing eating. Yeah, it was not good. I also had some really interesting observations about the timing of my meals during this experiment and how my blood sugars were affected. I found that when I was finally in ketosis, it didn't matter what time I ate, my blood sugars and ketones responded the same. So like my blood sugar was always the same no matter what time of day it was and how long it had been since I was eaten. So, for example, every day around 11 a.m., my blood sugar was always highest. When I would test at, say, 4 p.m., my blood sugar was within a few points of where it was at 4 o'clock the day before, even if I had just eaten. So I found that really curious. There's definite talk about the timing of your meals and how it's going to affect your results.
And how it does for some people, significantly.
Absolutely. Some people do better eating during the day and they don't eat after 3 o'clock, and that's the best for them. Some people, for whatever reason, their one meal a day is at 7 o'clock at night, and that's the only thing that works for them. So I found it real interesting that at that point, the timing of my meals didn't make as much of a change on my blood sugars as just what time of day was it when I took my reading. I felt a lot better. My mind was sharper, definitely. I could tell that the brain fog that keto was supposed to lift, it had finally lessened. My confidence was crazy. I've always suffered from self-confidence issues, and I couldn't believe the things that I was doing. Like, I walked into the office and asked my boss straight up for a raise, and that's not something I've ever done because I never had the confidence to do it. It was just crazy. I loved it. I loved how I was feeling, and I thought, wow, this must be how normal people feel all the time. After that experiment, my intention was to continue with Keto AF, so the 2-to-1 fat to protein ratio, but start adding other foods back in, not be on the elimination part of it anymore.
That's right, because you were just beef and butter to start with. I can remember you saying that you were, I think it was pork was the first other meat you were going to test, wasn't it?
Yep. I took votes and said, what do you guys think I should try? And I had already kind of decided on pork because I really missed bacon. I love bacon. But everybody said lamb, so I did pork and then lamb. And then I added back in chicken, a little bit of cheese, heavy whipping cream again, eggs here and there. I still have not figured out what happened, but for some reason, when I started adding these things back in, the floodgates opened and my carb cravings came back and hit me like a ton of bricks. It was insane how quickly and how hard the cravings came back.
And at what point? Because I know you started just with other meats. I mean, there was a scale, wasn't there? So it was, it was just beef and butter to start with, and then you started with the other meats, and then you just mentioned, eggs and some cream and some cheese. At what point did those cravings start kicking in again?
It was definitely within the first week and a half. I want to say it was after I started adding back the heavy whipping cream, but I'm not 100% on that. But I was in full-on sad mode. I went back to eating how I was eating 4 years ago before I even found keto. And I couldn't control it. It was nuts. Even when I was first keto adapting, 3 years ago, I didn't have these kinds of cravings. And it lasted for weeks. So probably about a week and a half, 2 weeks after the experiment is when all the cravings came back. And I'm actually still dealing with not so much the carb cravings anymore. They've finally gone away, but I'm still dealing with the physical effects of going back on that diet. My blood sugars went through the roof again. My readings were over 400 again, like when I was first diagnosed. Completely out of ketosis, of course. I gained back all of the weight I lost, all of the inches, all the pain, all the inflammation. My depression came back, and I just felt like shit for a long time. And along with that, of course, came the disappointment in myself. I tried to look at it from a learning perspective, and most of the time I'm pretty good about that, but I just couldn't help it. I just was continuously beating myself up emotionally about all of this. which goes hand in hand with the depression. I know that that's the depression talking, but it was full force.
Well, it's very difficult, isn't it, to get out of these cycles and these cascades once they start. You know, it's exactly the same as when you were talking about when it started to go the other way. Everything starts feeding into the next thing. So you started sleeping a bit better. Now that's going to improve your mood and your health the next day. And that feeds in again, and the increasing confidence and the control over food. And you can see how that just, all of those things just keep feeding each other. And it's just this, it gains this momentum.
Yeah, they build on each other.
Yeah. But the same thing, of course, happens when you're going the other way.
That's right. It tears you right back
down. They all
down.
feed into each other, and it's really difficult to stop that ball rolling. Once it's really picked up momentum, I know that feeling. It's very, very hard to stop it. You've got to find something, throwing that spanner in the works. You've just got to somehow stop that incredible momentum. And start desperately trying to turn it back the other way. But it's really hard, isn't it?
Yeah, it feels like crawling your way out of a 50-foot hole, by your nails, digging through the dirt, just literally crawling your way through. I had stopped most of my tracking because I knew that I wasn't going to be seeing what I wanted to see, and I didn't want to face
denial.
it.
Yep.
Yeah.
I do the same thing. I'm one of these people who, some people say, don't get on the scales every day. I'm one of these people who does get on the scales every day. Just out of habit, I get on the scales every day. I don't freak out when it's gone up a bit, and I don't get really happy when it's dropped down a lot, because that's one of the things actually with seeing it every day. You see how wild the fluctuations can be on a daily basis. But I do that every day until things aren't going quite right.
Right, and then you hide from yourself.
I don't step on those scales until I'm ready to throw that spanner back in, and then I'll start getting on them again.
Yeah. One of the things that I did was I finally said, okay, this is pissing me off. I get pretty dogged when I get angry. I used to have a boss who would make me angry on purpose. He'd piss me off on purpose because I worked harder and better. And so I just thought, okay, this is insane. I feel horrible. I know that all of these thoughts that I'm having, it's the sickness talking. It's not real. And 5 years ago, I would not have been able to make that statement to myself and believe it. I had just come out of a serious carb binge, and I took my readings, and my blood sugar went almost up to 500. And I took a screenshot. I took the packages. Of course, it was all processed food, right? So I took all of those packages and I put them in a pile, and I put my meter with that horrible reading on it on top of that pile, and I took a picture of it, and I put it as the screensaver on my phone, so that every time I opened my phone, I would see that picture and remind myself, this is not where you want to be. Look at all this success that you just had. You waited 2 whole years for this. You finally figured out what works for you. Don't screw it up. Don't feel guilty about it, because you're human. As you know, I have this perfectionist thing. I need to always present the best. But I tried to be very forgiving with myself, even though I was upset. That's not the way to continue. You can't move forward if you're still sitting in that. And so, little by little, I was able to start fighting the cravings. And maybe I'd give in, but I wouldn't have the worst food I could have. The food would be a little bit better than the last time. After a few weeks, it's been a couple months now? I'm really just now, maybe within the last week and a half, to the point where I am almost entirely keto AF again. My last craving was last week. I wanted something sweet. I wanted ice cream. Ice cream is a weakness for me, definitely.
I know that feeling.
Yeah. And there's a frozen yogurt place right up the street from me. And there, of course, it's not about the frozen yogurt. It's about everything you put on top of it, right? So I went to the store and I found a keto ice cream. It was not the best thing that I should have been eating at the time, but it was keto. So I allowed myself to have that. And I think that's just kind of what I needed to get over that last hurdle. I haven't had any cravings since. And in fact, I made those chaffles, however you want to pronounce them.
Chaffle, 100% chaffle, yep.
I made some of those the other day, and I don't put any flours in them. It's just eggs and cheese.
Me too.
So that I'm still carnivore. But I did put a little bit of sugar-free syrup on them, and they tasted really good, but it didn't do anything for me. I was like, you know what? I can live without this. This sugar-free syrup actually is kind of making me a little bit sick. So I think I'm finally over that last hurdle. Cross my fingers.
Yeah, that to me shows a real position of strength, because that could have been that moment, that sent you back into the free fall of cravings for sweet things. So that to me says that, yeah, you're regaining that strength.
Yeah.
You're in that position now where you can say, not that bothered.
Yeah. And like I say, before even just a week ago, it would have been real easy to tip to the other side. It's kind of like walking a tightrope. Wiggle either way, you might fall off. You got to be really careful.
And like you say, making that good decision about the ice cream, it's like, okay, so I'm making that choice. I've really got to have some ice cream. But you make that choice within the boundaries of it having to be keto ice cream.
Right.
That's a good, solid decision. It might not be the best decision you would have wanted to make at that time would be to say, okay, well, I'm not going to have ice cream at all. But that wasn't possible.
Right.
You had to have it.
Because I'd be fighting myself.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
That can end up becoming something really, really problematic and going on for ages.
Yes.
But to be able to just give in, but within those boundaries, that's really positive.
Yeah, and I'm not going to be mad at myself about it.
No.
I can tell now when I am in the grips of something I can't control, and when I am to the point where, yes, I can control this now. It's not going to be 100% what I want, but it's not going to be something that's absolutely detrimental to me right now. I mostly stayed without spices. I think most people on Keto AF, so it stands for Keto Animal Foods, which really means it's literally just the meat and your fat. Some people do spices, and I had quit all of those things. I used to put tons of garlic on my food. I just loved flavor. And maybe it's because I was trying to subconsciously mimic the hyper palatability of the foods I wasn't eating anymore. Mostly I don't use the spices anymore. I don't even miss it, which is weird. To me, it's weird. So it's mostly still just salt. I am almost entirely beef and bacon, of course, but very rarely do I have the other meats anymore. I'll occasionally get a hankering for some chicken, and I'll go ahead and eat it with a ton of butter on it, of course. Can't ever go without my butter. But yeah, I feel that I'm in a position now where I'm able to get back to almost exactly what I was doing during those 30 days, or at least very, very close to it. I don't know that I will ever give up bacon. I'm kind of the bacon lady at work because I cook a lot of it.
I'm not sure why you would need to. The only reason I can think why you would need to look at that is if you were finding that it was impacting you from a craving point of view.
Yeah, and I don't think it has been. I did notice when I started adding those foods back in that my blood sugars did start jumping up again, but I think that I had cut down on the fat. So I added more protein, but I didn't keep the same 2-to-1 ratio. And in fact, now that I think about it, I started getting a little bit sick at the very tail end of the 30 days. I just couldn't stomach the butter for some reason. I had had no problems the entire 3 weeks before, and I never got bored of the food. I thought I would, but I didn't. But towards the end, for some reason, it was just really bothering me, and so I stopped having the butter, and thus increasing the protein had kind of, double that reversing effect, right? But I have not noticed since I've started testing again and eating other meats, I have not noticed that bacon in particular is doing anything wrong for me. I had some chicken last night, and I had 3/4 of a stick of butter. It wasn't an entire stick. And my blood sugars were actually okay this morning. And my ketones were at 0.7. So I am moving back up that mountain that was, it's building on itself. So that was nice to see.
But isn't it interesting how we're all so different, and how if you went into certain groups on Facebook or wherever, or I'm sure in Reddit and any other communities, I'm not familiar with the Reddit community at all, but they would be saying to you, get your protein up, but lower that fat. And isn't it interesting that it only works for you when you have that ratio, that 2-to-1 ratio or thereabouts? And so doing the opposite, what a lot of people would be telling you. You're big, you've got plenty of fat on your body, you don't need it on your plate, eat all the protein you like, but drive that fat down.
Right. It's actually a pretty heated debate, depending on where you're at. There's a Keto AF subreddit, and also Josh Blackburn, who is the person who kind of made this more known about the 2-to-1 ratio. He has a website about it too. I've heard of some Twitter arguments between certain medical professionals or keto professionals arguing that fat is still the problem if you're not losing any weight, regardless of whatever else is going on. And I think that even in the keto community, we have to be careful making blanket statements. We all get irritated at the standard of care, medical, science, community, whatever, who says everybody just needs to eat this one way. There's blanket statements all over the place. And it's obviously not right. Everybody's different. But even within our own keto community, people are still doing that around the keto outline, but they're still making blanket statements. And I just think that that's the wrong approach. If somebody is not losing weight, you can't only be focused on how much fat are you eating. It's too much. Whatever it is, it's too much. You have to look at as many different things as you are aware of that can affect it. It actually kind of makes me angry now, because every podcast that I listen to where they're talking about fat intake, every forum I'm in, Facebook groups, whatever, the number one thing that people say is stop eating all that fat. And if I was still listening to that, I would never have found out that that's not what works for me. What works for me is doubling down on the fat. The theory behind it is that, or at least a theory, is that my body needs an extra amount of fat in order to heal, because I am so metabolically sick that my body, the fat that I have for my body to burn is not enough to function and heal at the same time. It's only going to choose one or the other. So it's probably healing me, but at a very, very small percentage compared to when I double down on the fat. Now it has more energy to function every day and also apply more of that energy to the healing. It's those kind of thoughts that make me go, wow, my body is weird, but it's really cool hearing these things and coming up with these ideas as to why this is working. And it makes sense to me. I'm really sick. I might not have wanted to admit that to myself for a really long time, but I am really, really sick. I want to be like everybody else who can just stop eating carbs and lose 100 pounds in 10 months, and that's all they have to do. I have to work really freaking hard at it. And that's okay. I'm willing to do that. But now I know why I have to do that. That question that has been plaguing me for a couple years now is finally getting answered. And I think that weight loss and inflammation loss aside, that's really the success. I finally know why.
Yeah. Wow. I just always think of you when you see all these arguments raging, and I'm like you. I get sick of these blanket statements, and I get sick of people insisting that what they're saying is going to work for you is going to work for you when you know damn well it's not going to. Just because either it worked for them or they're just convinced that that's the way to do it. And it's just absolute proof. I mean, I don't really know anyone who's worked harder at trying to lose weight and trying to get healthy and trying to heal herself as you have, with that endless frustration of not getting anywhere from a weight loss point of view. Because as much as that is only one part of the puzzle, that is only one of the things that we want to change. It tends to be the thing that we want to change the most. It tends to be the thing that we still look at as the proof that it's working.
Exactly.
And so even when you have some of the other things going on, it's very difficult to get fully on board with believing that it's working if the scale isn't moving. Even maybe if it's just moving a little bit, we just have that mentality, don't we? And when you've got so much weight to lose, it's like, come on, come on.
Yeah, give me a break here. But it's not even just proving to myself. I told my son one day, if I ate a donut and my arm fell off, you can be guaranteed I would never eat another donut, right?
Mm.
Results that are visual or tangible results, not me having a number on a meter, but, physical results that you can see. Honestly, those are the ones that matter to most people, right? Like, I had a family member say to me one time, if this is such a great diet, why isn't it working? And they said that because they couldn't see a difference in me. And they didn't mean anything, insulting about it. It was a legitimate question. And, sometimes I get this imposter syndrome. I talk to people about healthier eating when they ask me, why are you eating, 15 strips of bacon and a stick of butter for lunch today? I've only had one person suggest to me that I am doing it all wrong. And why don't you just have some more fruit? Something like that. And I said, well, sugar is sugar. There's no such thing as natural sugar is healthier. I mean, maybe it is a little bit, but when it gets inside your body doesn't care where it came from. Sugar is sugar. And my body does not respond well to that, so I'm not eating it. And they kept going on, and I said, I have a food addiction. I have a carb addiction. I crave carbs all the time. It's something I have to fight. And so I just don't eat them. And they kept going on, and I said, look, you wouldn't tell an alcoholic just have one sip. Right? You wouldn't say that to somebody with an addiction. Why are you saying it to me? But other than that, people are inquisitive. Wow, that's what you're eating? You don't eat any vegetables? No. How come? Because it doesn't make me feel good and my body doesn't do well with them. Oh, okay, that's cool. In that respect, it's really nice, but I do sometimes feel like I'm not a good example of the great thing that is keto and not eating carbs, because it's not a physical change yet. Nobody cares about the numbers. People want to see that there's a difference. And so that's kind of tough to deal with, but I can see that things are better. I have the test results from when I started, and I have the test results from when the experiment ended, and everything got better or stayed the same or fluctuated within an acceptable range. Nothing, literally nothing got worse. I didn't kill myself eating 2 sticks of butter a day.
And those numbers become very important, don't they? When you understand what they mean, what it means to have chronically high blood sugar.
Yes.
And conversely, what it means to get those numbers down, what that actually means from the inside out for your health. That's the beauty of going down all those rabbit holes and looking into the science and doing all that research, because you really know what that means. Everyone thinks they know what it means when you lose a bit of weight. Of course, it depends kind of how you're losing that weight, but that's a very obvious, very visible, very tangible thing. But really getting to grips with knowing what it means, what's going on in your body, that can become a really strong motivational factor for you when perhaps the scale isn't moving, because we all know you've mastered how to make it move now. So you've got that bit down. But, you can keep yourself going with looking at these other numbers because you really know what they mean.
Yes, and I think that understanding was part of how I was able to fight what happened after the experiment. I think that if I hadn't become a person of n equals 1, that I would still struggle with understanding not only what's going on inside, but why I am unable to fight it. I think that a lot of people are still closed-minded when it comes to your health. A lot of people, they don't really want to think about the why. A lot of people don't care about why, they just want it fixed. When I first came to keto, I was like a lot of those people okay, well, this seems to work, so just tell me what I need to do. Tell me what to eat, tell me how much. It was people who wouldn't supply the answers that made me start going, okay, there must be a reason everybody is saying do your own research. And so I started doing my own research. I think I transitioned from being a person who was inquisitive but not enough to figure it out for myself to being somebody who is, okay, I have this result, now what does it mean? And what other effect is it going to have? And okay, I have this problem now. What are the steps that I've taken in the past that I know will fix that or could maybe fix it? I've definitely become a self-experimenter. And I think that if anybody is having a problem, a continuous problem, even though they're doing all the right things, there's still something for you to look at. There's always something else to look at. I think that you have to get more dialed in to what it is that's going on with you if you're not seeing what you want to see.
And the thing that I found that is the spanner you throw in when that momentum is really going and you can't see a way to stop it. And I never thought it would be this, but it's changing the food. If things have gone off the rails for me, and I think, and I'm sure you find this, when you've found something that works, that's the thing that you can stop the ball rolling with.
You hold on to it for dear life.
Yeah.
It's almost literally the life preserver. Okay, God, I found something. This helps. I'm going to hold on to this and let this thing help me ride through whatever is going on right now, because I know that this is okay. And you get that feeling back of being on semi-solid ground again.
And what about the guy that you were determined to prove wrong? Are you still in touch with him? The one who led you down this path in the first place?
No, I'm not. He'll always have a special place in my heart for starting me down this road in the first place.
Yeah.
But we ended up just kind of drifting apart, in part because he kept asking me, have you lost any weight yet? Have you lost any weight yet? And that became what all the conversation was about.
Yeah.
And of course, I hadn't lost anything. So, yeah, that's a little unfortunate. I'd love to catch up with him and go, I finally know why.
Did he ever get to say, I told you so?
No, but if that opportunity ever comes around, you better believe I'll write it on a billboard.
You do indeed owe him a thank you, I think.
Absolutely. I thank him every day. He doesn't know it, but that's okay.
One of these days you'll bump into him again and you'll be able to say, yeah, okay, you were right.
Yep. If he recognizes me.
It's funny, isn't it, how you can start these things out of an argument. It was the same for me, actually.
Yeah, I was just thinking, exactly, that sounds like a familiar story. Yep.
Yeah.
I was so determined to prove him wrong. But it was good motivation.
And that's the thing,
right?
isn't it? Yeah, that's the thing when you can't. When they say, okay, here are some sites where you can go and have a look at the science and make your own mind up.
Right. Because he wouldn't argue with me.
No.
And sometimes you're looking for a little bit of that debate, right? Most of the time now, I can't stand drama, so I stay away from all that kind of stuff. But a little bit of a healthy debate is fine, right? And he wouldn't do it. He said, go figure it out. I gave you the starting points. Now you go do it. I'm not going to do it for you. And so in my efforts to prove him wrong, I had to go and do the work myself so that I could find whatever it was that would prove him wrong.
Darn it.
I know.
Well, I commend you. I think you have, like I've said already, more determination than anyone else I know, and myself included. I remember what it was like when I was twice the size I am now, and I know how frustrating that was when you were virtuous for a while doing some kind of diet, and maybe I did lose a bit, but not much. And then I'd come off it and I'd put it all back on again and a bit more. And it was just so easy to go back to all that comfort eating. And I needed the help of bariatric surgery. And I don't think I could have done it without that. And I never once thought of turning it down. So I really commend you for going it alone and having the determination to do it. And I know you will succeed.
Thank you. You're making me blush. You have been a definite rock for me. I found Keto Woman podcast through Carl and Richard, and I listened to the episode where I think it was you and Louise and
Donna.
Yes, that's the one.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just, I was hooked. So thank you. You have been an inspiration to me, and you have kept me grounded. And I just appreciate that more than you know.
Well, you might have suspected, but it's a little bit of a surprise, but you're very special. And I'm going to get emotional now.
I already am.
But I was thinking, you might have realised the 100th episode is coming up.
Oh.
And what am I going to do for it? What am I going to do for the 100th episode? And what do I do? Well, you're the 100th episode because you're what this podcast is all about. You're truly extraordinary. And I wanted to, it's a little thing, isn't it? It's only a little thing, but I wanted to honour you in that way. And just to let you know how special I think you are.
I don't even know what to say. I am so grateful for the road that led me here and to you and the group. I was, like a lot of people, I was all alone on this island for a long time. And I think that if I hadn't found you and the group, I would have stopped a long time ago. I probably would have given up. I had a pretty unpleasant experience with someone who chastised me for putting down food that I was tempted to eat. I was actually buying donuts because I was giving into cravings. And I was very proud of myself that I put them back. And instead of congratulating me for being able to fight that, the person chewed me out for costing the store some money. And I almost quit at that point because I thought, well, what is the point?
Yeah.
This is not a supportive atmosphere. And then, like I say, I found you, and all the support that I needed was right there in that place. And you are the rock of that group. You really are. Probably more than you know, or maybe are willing to admit to yourself. I know how humble you are. But yeah, I really, truly am beyond grateful for you and your support. I really am.
Well, you're very welcome. And I know you're a great inspiration to many women in that group. We all love you. You know it. Well, it has been a great pleasure and privilege speaking to you today. maybe, and you know what I'm going to say.
Yes,
maybe
ma'am.
You could leave us with a top tip.
Okay, a top tip. I've been thinking about this for a few days now, and I settled on a very simple tip that I think is not said enough, and that is don't ever give up on yourself. Keep at it. Keep trying different things. Don't believe everything you hear. Try the things that sound a little crazy, like eating 2 sticks of butter a day. Every problem has a solution. You just have to find it.
Well, it sounds like you found it. And I look forward to seeing it really work this time and seeing you do as well as you deserve to and get the results you're looking for.
I plan to.
I know you will.
And you'll be right there with me.
I will indeed. Thank you, April.
Thank you.
To get the resources and links from this show, please go to ketowomanpodcast.com/episodes. Please share this podcast with as many people as possible by sharing one of my links or just taking a screenshot of an episode that you enjoyed. Reviews really help raise the profile of the podcast, which gets it in front of more people, but also helps me attract a wide variety of guests. So please take a minute to leave a review on whichever podcast app or platform you like to listen on. It doesn't go unnoticed by me, the people who regularly like, share and comment on my posts. Your support really does mean the world to me. Thank you. Are you enjoying this podcast? Help me make more episodes and videos by making a pledge at my Patreon page, patreon.com/KetoWoman. Or simply hit the support button on the Keto Woman Podcast website. Don't forget to join in the fun on the Keto Woman Podcast Instagram and Facebook pages, and Daisy_Keto Woman on Twitter. Are you my next extraordinary woman? Maybe you've got an idea for a show, a topic you would like to hear about. Let me know how I can tickle your earbuds by dropping me a line at daisy@ketowomanpodcast.com. This week's end quote is from Lou Holtz. Show me someone who has done something worthwhile, and I'll show you someone who has overcome adversity. Bye-bye, Keto Lovelies.